done incredible bloodshed and mass murder and wiped out significant portions of their populations, the people who are ultimately responsible and will bear the incredible karmic weight of those actions that are in total contravention to natural law are the ones, the actual individuals who are doing those behaviors. So in effect, the answer to your question is they're actually really shielded from it quite well. They're still going to experience karmic repercussions, but those repercussions are going to be significantly dampened. Dampened in comparison to the people who actually take the actions. I really want people to deeply, deeply think about what I have just said here. They are the ones who are going to have to deal with the major karmic repercussions of those actions. So, I'm sure Hitler probably has shot people in his lifetime, but I guarantee you he didn't shoot as many people as certain German soldiers or certain people in the Schutzstaffel or certain people in the Luftwaffe who dropped bombs on people. I guarantee you they killed way more people than he ever did, or Himmler for that matter. And the people who are actually going out and raping other people's inherent natural law rights are the ones who are actually going to have to answer to those actions, for those actions. That is the answer to that question.
In this lifetime or the next, or?
Both. Probably in the physical reality that we live in, and then in whatever spiritual domain they happen to pass to when they relinquish the physical body. Both domains.
Okay, thank you very much.
You got it. That's a great question. It has been asked before, but I don't think it could ever really be understated. The answer to that question cannot be understated. And I think it's something that people really deeply need to consider, because, and this is actually a perfect segue. I want to thank the caller for calling in and actually asking this question again, because this is a perfect segue to something that I do want to talk about that has everything to do with natural law. And it has exactly to do with this. And in the meantime, while I'm telling this story, if other people want to call in, you have the call-in number and the lines are open. So if you call in, I'll go right to you. So there was this big issue going on, and I very rarely talk about current events, as you know. I mean, I didn't even mention the earthquake or hurricane that we had over the last couple of weeks because I don't talk about specific events so much. 9/11 is, of course, an exception to that rule, but this isn't a news show, okay? This is something where we, again, try to get down to the causal factors about what we're experiencing in life. And there was a really big, semi-big story going on about how police were busting children's lemonade stands just out on their lawns. Okay, just outside their homes, setting up a lemonade stand, which has been a tradition in this country since its founding. And cops were going over to them and saying they're operating without a license. You're operating a business without a license to a child. Okay, regardless of whether it was an adult or not, you don't need a license to do something that you have a natural law right to do. So, and that you're not harming anyone out as a result of that action. So you heard about this going on, and busts were being made, which is utterly ridiculous, completely against natural law. The cops should be utterly ashamed of themselves. It's a perfect Nazi is what they are. Perfect. You would have been wonderful, wonderful accessories at Sobibor or at Treblinka or at Dachau or at Auschwitz. You would have been wonderful, okay? Because it's the same mentality. It's the same mentality that people died fighting when we fought the British, died fighting when we fought the Nazis, and you're acting in the same way, okay? Wonderful example for your own children. But anyway, it's general principles and its expressions on the show today. And we took a call before in the last segment in which the caller asked, the mind controllers the dark occultists, the so-called elite, the powers that shouldn't be, as people refer to them as, how do they insulate themselves from all of the karmic debt that is going to be built up from doing all of the horrible things that go on in this world that they're ultimately, quote, responsible for? And I've answered this question before by saying they're not going to bear the brunt of all of that karmic weight. The people who actually take the actions that they're telling them to take are going to take the brunt of it. And that means the military and the police, who are actually pulling the triggers, dropping the bombs, raping people's rights. Doesn't matter whether they think they're doing the right thing. It does not matter. This is a new age lie, quite frankly. In plainest terms, it's the only way I could put it. The fact, people try to say that it's fact that if you don't know you're doing the wrong thing and you do the action anyway, you're going to have less karmic repercussions as a result of taking that action. And that's absolute BS. Absolute BS. And this is a deliberate lie injected into the New Age movement by dark occultism, because they know the truth. That the people who actually do the action, whether they are in understanding of the principles of natural law or not, will have that karmic repercussion come down upon their mind, body, and soul. It does not matter whether they understand this or whether they think they are doing the right thing. Matters zero. Zero. If you took the action, you and you alone are responsible for it. Now, telling someone to go and do something that is knowing that they know is evil, that the person who's telling them knows is an evil act, is quite a bad thing in and of itself. And there will be karmic repercussions for that, but I guarantee you they will not be as severe as the person who took the action. Guaranteed. So I was telling an anecdotal story about the lemonade crackdowns that these police have nothing better to do but then go serve their corporate masters as whores for their corporatist overlords and go and serve their biddings and shut down this unregulated commerce without a license, which equates to destroying a little girl's lemonade stand. Okay? So people set up protests about this, and they set up lemonade stands in different areas, in public areas in a bunch of different cities. And a couple of cops shut down one in Washington, D.C., which they were protesting this activity. And a couple of the cops that went over to these girls and shut down their stand and put them in cuffs and took them off were black. Okay? And this isn't a racial issue, but what it is it's a moral issue. Okay? It's a moral issue that has everything to do with natural law. It has everything to do with principle. It has everything to do with morality. Okay? An interviewer, after filming the events, a person who filmed these horrible events, said to one of the cops, how aren't you totally disgusted with yourself? How do you even sleep? How do you live with yourself? How do you look at yourself in a mirror? And one of them, they were both black, one of them answered, and that's, again, it's not a race thing. It's irrelevant. They could have been Indian police. They could have been Japanese police. It doesn't make a difference. They could have been Native American. They could have been white. Irrelevant. Okay? I'm trying to highlight the amoral, psychopathic mindset that these people are in. And they think that they're moral. They think they're doing something good. And yet they're completely amoral, have no principles. Their parents did not raise them. I'd like an opportunity to say that to one of their faces. Because I would say that to one of their faces. And you can, if anybody knows who that person is that I'm going to talk to, because many people will know this video, tell them that I'll say it right to their face. Because I'm not afraid of them. And I know that they're immoral. It's not my opinion. I understand how natural law works. I understand how they broke it. And they don't care as long as they're getting paid. That's their God. That's their God. They don't have any God. Their God is the dollar bill. So he was asked the question, if you were a cop in the 1950s during segregation, would you have enforced the segregation laws? And he tries to escape the question by saying, well, I wouldn't have been a cop. Yeah, you wouldn't have, because you wouldn't have been allowed to be back then. Okay? But he says, okay, it's a hypothetical, you know, hypothetically. And he says, proudly, yes, I would have enforced the segregation laws if I was a cop in the 1950s. A black man said this. And what I want to know is, where was the moral outrage about the answer to this question? First of all, it was wrong no matter what color you were, but it's almost like you can understand how it's like doubly insane and doubly wrong in some ways, that he's basically saying, I have no affinity with my own people. Okay, I'm saying, I have always said you shouldn't be identifying with a race at all. With race is an illusion. We are all human beings here. We are all people who are at some level or another suffering. And as one suffers, all suffer. But just imagine, that's like saying, I wouldn't care if they oppressed members of my own family. If members of my own family were being told, get to the back of the bus, and they resisted that, I would lock them up, put them in handcuffs, and haul them off to jail. Because my owners told me that that's what my job is, and I don't get paid unless I do that. And another guy said, hey, man, I'm not going to rock the boat. I'm making 6 figures at my job. You know, he must be a captain or whatever. Because that's all that is of value to this individual. Truth is meaningless. Rights are meaningless. As long as they're being paid, they will do whatever they are being paid to do. That's it. Whatever their owner is paying them to do and telling them to do, they will do. And then he steps back and tries to say, your issue is not with me, meaning a police officer, a cop. Your issue is with the lawmakers. And you know what I'll say to that person? Absolutely not. Wrong. Wrong. And get it clear. The issue is not with the people scribbling down things in a book someplace. You're the issue. Let's make that real clear. And I'm deliberately raising my voice. Because the people who think that these aren't the people to point a finger at, and there is a time to point a finger. There is such a thing as blame. It exists when people are doing things that are overtly wrong and against conscience. Yeah, you can say, hey, you, doing this action, you're wrong. And then you want to step back and raise up your hands and say, I'm absolved of this? Don't look at me. You're the one doing it. Who are we supposed to hold accountable? Somebody who told you to go and do an action that's clearly wrong, and you say, well, as long as I get a paycheck, yeah, sure, I'll go and do whatever you ask me to do if it's wrong. I don't consider the notion of right or wrong. I don't consider natural law. Rights have no meaning to me. I don't consider rights. I consider a paycheck. And this clearly, folks, you can hear this riles me up. Especially because the person tried to say that he's not the one who should be held accountable for it. That really riles me up. And it should rile you up too. Because, again, that is the mentality of someone that would have exterminated mass groups of people in Stalinist Russia. That is the mentality that would have gone along with hoarding people into gas chambers or other forms of prison and work camps and detention camps. That's the mentality that will continue to go along with this New World Order agenda of total enslavement of the people. And it's completely the antithesis of all of the principles of freedom that this country was founded upon. Got a little fired up in the last segment. I tend to do that when I talk about people who have no conscience. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about a cop who will answer a question about a black cop, no less, that will answer a question about whether he would have enforced segregation laws. That means if they reinforced them today, he'd be locking up black people for getting on buses, sitting up in the front of a bus. That's what he's basically saying. And I want to know, where's the outrage from everyone? It doesn't matter what color you are. But particularly, where's the outrage from the black community on this? And again, this isn't a racial issue. This is a moral issue. Where's the outrage from that person's own parents? Oh no, they'll probably praise him because he's got such a wonderful job and he brings home 6 figures. Because that's all that's of any value, right? Well, I'll lay out a challenge. I don't even want to hear from that Nazi. I want to hear from his parents, because you raised a Nazi. And if anybody can find out who the parents of that person are in the video that I'm talking about, maybe I'll post that video with this podcast so people can look at it. Find the person's parents and have them call into this show. There's a challenge for folks out there. He obviously lives in the Washington, D.C. area because this is where this happened. I'd like to talk to that person's parents and tell them they didn't raise a human being with a conscience, they raised a Nazi. So let's go back to the phones to take out the show in this last segment. Here we go. Chris in Canada, you are live on whatonearthishappening.com. What do you have for us?
Hey, buddy, you're talking about your natural law. I thought you were talking in the second person earlier. I really don't like these divide and conquer issues that you're discussing. I find it distracts from the real issues.
And natural law isn't one of the real issues? Hold on, back up. Natural law is not one of the real issues.
No, natural law is one of the real issues, but
okay.
The black and white issue.
There's only people who understand natural law and attempt to live in harmony with it, and people who just completely disregard it and think that they can do whatever they want with no repercussions and no effects outwardly in society that degrade the quality of life for all. That's what there is. It's not a divide and conquer issue. It's reality. That's how you can actually look at the consciousness of humanity. See, this is the idea that New Age movements try to put out there, that there's no such thing as different levels in consciousness, that there's no such thing as different levels in understanding, that everybody is at the same place. That's not true. It's not a divide and conquer strategy. I'm speaking the truth. There are people at extraordinarily low states of consciousness through fear. This person is one of the most fearful human beings on the planet. You think the Nazis who did the atrocities that they did, or the secret police of Russia who did the atrocities that they did under Stalin, you think that they weren't fearful people? Do you think they were high consciousness individuals? Do you think they had any real deep understanding of morality and natural law? None. None of those things applied. And you want to look to who actually did those things? Don't look at the people who were directing it. That's the distraction, sir. That's the distraction. The distraction is that people want to always blame somebody above them. And that history then records that Hitler did these atrocities. Yeah, was he one of the puppets that basically trickled down the orders of the masters down to all of the other foot soldiers? Absolutely. And he was vile and evil, just like Himmler was, and Goebbels and all of the other ones. But it doesn't happen without the people willing to carry out those orders, because they don't care about right or wrong. That's the bottom line. And that's the truth. Next caller. Ed, thanks so much. Great call. And you absolutely bring up the point that people are dissuaded from looking within and really understanding, is the action that I am about to take in this moment right or wrong? Because they're always thinking in the future. This is what real present moment awareness is about, which is another solution we're going to talk about. Okay? They have you thinking in the future all the time. Well, what if with this, we let this go and then this will happen and this will happen and then, but, then. This is all future projection, and this is all justification for one's immoral actions that one is taking in the present moment, and never wanting to look at themselves, never wanting to turn the finger inward and say, I need to take a look at my own actions, what I am actually doing to other people. That's what the force of darkness, for lack of a better term, is always trying to get people to ignore. Never to look at that. Never to look at the fact that they are doing something immoral in the present moment. The ego wants to rationalize, it wants to justify, it wants to scapegoat, it wants to point the finger outward, it wants absolution for one's own immoral behaviors. It wants to say, no, someone else was in control of my actions, someone else was in control of my mind. It has nothing to do with me, even though I'm the one actually doing this thing that's wrong.